Thank you very much. And through the miracles of modern collaboration and science, everything looks like it's working. So thank you, Jenny and company, for making it so easy. So we're going to spend half an hour talking about this wondrous world of signals that I'm calling a key to precision for modern go-to-market. And what I want to be able to do today in this short time is just give you maybe a better understanding of why I think, and we think this is so important, and what effect is it going to have for and on marketing and marketing leaders with respect to go-to-market success. And there are a number of things that I'll cover through the half hour that we have. You heard, I think, just some of the challenges, opportunities, et cetera, that companies are facing. I'm going to take it a step further and talk about some of the challenges that we see that marketers and marketing leaders face. We'll talk about how, or hopefully give solutions and methods so that marketing can adapt, change, and deliver go-to-market impact and value. We will talk about this evolution from the world of intent to the world of signals and how we got there and where it's heading. And I'm going to talk about applications that we call customer intelligence applications that help deliver on the promise and import of signals. And what presentation would be complete in today's world if there wasn't at least a short mention and discussion of generative AI or Gen AI. And so, of course, we'll have a few minutes to talk about the impact that Gen AI has on these applications and on the market that we're talking about here. But I thought, first, it's sort of interesting. Timing is everything. I was sent yesterday a wealth of slides and data that we didn't create. And you can see the source on the bottom. I'm trying to read it. It's chiefmartech.com from this year. But I saw the slide yesterday and said, wow, I have to include this, and credit to them for the work that they did. But when you look at the two questions and you look at the areas that folks are planning to focus on, it doesn't say signals, but to me, it screams signals. So in terms of technologies to be invested in, it's data enrichment and intent tools, AI to help support that, analytics tools, ABM tools, how do we hyper-personalize our websites and so on. And then in terms of data priorities over the next 12 months, it's again, this wonderful world of how do we support our marketing initiatives through ABM and go-to-market plays and so on. This is sort of the best news for an audience that's anxious to hear about how signals can have an impact. I think like our last speaker Dave talked about, there should be a lot of optimism that there's an opportunity to bring this sort of technology in to make things happen and make it happen better. And I thought it would be useful to talk about that in context of the challenges that we see marketers and marketing leaders face every day. And I think if it's not at the top of the list all the time, it's pretty close to the top of the list. If you ask folks, what is it you're trying to accomplish and what are you pressed and pressing to do? To be alliterative, it's driving precise pipeline and obviously be able to convert that pipeline into revenue. And it's challenging, as I'm sure all of you know, for a whole variety of different reasons. There's this wide variety of data. There are multiple go-to-market motions, and making it even more tricky, there's a number of different mouths to feed. There are different audiences, obviously, that marketers serve internally inside of companies. You have your SDRs, your AEs, your customer success managers and folks, your account managers, and they may have different names and slightly different roles across the plethora of companies that we work with. But marketers are challenged to serve those audiences the right way, the right time, with the right information, so that prospects buy, that customers expand, and so on. So challenge number one, how do we drive precise pipeline? One of the ways to help do that is to have this mythical 360-degree view of your customer. This is something that we've heard about forever, but how good are we at actually driving that and creating it? Our data tells us we're not that good at it. So you can see at the top of the bar charts here that only 13%, and these are high-tech companies, so remember my world is high-tech, so only 13% of high-tech companies say that they have achieved this 360-degree view of a customer. And a larger number, just over a third, have made some progress toward it, but largely this is unrealized. And that's in spite of a variety of mechanisms to help us try to get there, some of which you saw on the last slide. But we've always had ideal customer profiles. We may not listen to them or stick to them. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. But there's a notion of an ideal customer profile. By the way, an ideal customer profile is the set of accounts where ultimately you have an outsized opportunity to win. That's the way that I think of ICP. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. But okay, so we have ICP, we've had account-based marketing, we have the notion of and practices of RevOps, and maybe the organizational overhaul that RevOps had talked about years ago didn't quite work, but we certainly value the ability to connect the data from all the various areas of operation. And then we have different models of go-to-market to deal with. The challenge with these, or a significant challenge with all of these, is that they only really work well when there's alignment across functions. And how often do you all, and how often do we at Gartner hear from our marketing clients that, if only sales would listen, if only we could be aligned better with sales. And I'm not just picking on the marketing and sales combination, it's customer success, it's executives. But for the most part, these initiatives cannot work well if there's not agreement, alignment at a functional level, and certainly at a data level. So this, just makes it harder. It's also a constant refrain that our marketers and marketing leaders are looking for respect, and they're seeking to be able to prove that they have an impact and are demonstrating value from the function. We could have a long, fun discussion about how tech goes about doing things versus other vertical markets. And you could make an argument that marketing and tech is often behind the eight ball. But be that as it may, it is a top priority, and it's part of our leadership vision going into next year, that marketing constantly has to prove its impact and prove its value. And unfortunately, the number one metric in which or within which marketing views its impact and is viewed to have impact is the MQL. And you're looking at a chart, and granted, these are operational metrics. We have a set of strategic metrics that are different, and the strategic metrics start off with revenue. But in spite of that, it's too often the case that the MQL is the be all and end all. And, I'm not certainly the first one to talk about, hey, we can't all be over-focused on MQLs. And I'm not saying that MQLs have zero value, but I'll put it in the words that a tech CMO of an $8-ish billion company I was speaking with just yesterday said. He said that, if I'm not generating MQLs, I might as well be fired. I mean, that's penny ante. That's part of the business. MQLs are indicators. I'm measured on convertible or converting pipeline that I can deliver and converts to revenue. That's how I'm measured. So as a challenge, we have to be able to move beyond just, this notion of, the number of MQLs is the yardstick by which we'll be measured. So those are challenges. At the same time, go-to-market motions and methods are evolving. And I'm going to paint, I think, a very simplistic picture of this, but I think it's going to present a couple of important points. So if you think about it traditionally, most organizations over a zillion years of selling and marketing have been outbound, focused on outbound as a way to reach customers. And it has certain characteristics. It's a top-down sell. Typically, customers going after outbound leads went after folks high up in the hierarchy, folks that they thought were making buying decisions. So very top-down motion, a very sales-led motion. I would make an argument that in a lot of cases, it was trying to fit buyers into a sales process versus the opposite. Talk about that with the next motion in a second. But hey, it is what it is, and it was what it was, and it still exists. I'm not saying outbound doesn't exist. I'm not saying that sales-led doesn't exist or isn't valuable or doesn't work, but it's one motion. And it was represented by a funnel of stepping through these things that represent the sales or marketing and sales activities and the lead qualifiers, the MQLs, the SALs, the SQLs, and so on, that suggest that an account or a prospect is moving through it. Challenge here, right, among many, a challenge that the funnel stop at the purchase. So with the evolution and onslaught of SaaS and subscription and so on, it can't just stop there. It has to go further. So then we have inbound. And again, this is a very, very much of a generalization. Outbound and inbound coexist, obviously, but I think a representative evolution of a way to do inbound better became product-led. So product-led growth in B2B tech in particular started having its heyday, let's say 3 to 4 years ago. PLG had been around since about 2014, but it was largely B2C oriented. But about 4 years ago, tech companies woke up and said, hey, we recognize that buyers and buying are changing. We know that buyers don't really want to talk to salespeople right off. We know they want to do their own research. And we have numbers that talk about 70, 80+% of the work that buyers do happens before they talk to anyone. So product-led became a way to allow those prospective users and buyers of offerings to experience their value through something like a free offer, a free trial, a freemium offer, open source, interactive demo increasingly. But the notion there was create advocates that you could then recognize as part of an account and convert it. And we started talking about a loop because it recognized, and PLG recognizes largely, that people buy, they need to renew, we need to expand them. And so it's this constant loop. So I'm going to argue that what we need to be able to drive to is what I'll call unbound. And unbound means that from a marketing perspective, we don't care. We don't care what the motion is, but we're ready for it. If we have products that only fit a top-down motion, great. Then we'll recognize ultimately the signals. We'll recognize the information that's thrown off of those accounts that are in that motion. We'll know what to do with them. If it's product-led, we'll recognize that too and serve them up the right information, actions, and so on, so that they progress and see value in what we offer. Our job largely as vendors becomes, how do we educate and help those buyers to understand what we do, why it's different, why it's better, and then help them negotiate that purchase, make that change, and so on. In the model here, I think loop still works. There's I think a pretty neat model of a bow tie that people look at now as a way to extend prospecting from and through the initial purchase all the way through renewal and expansion. And I think the neat thing about thinking about things this way is that if you do this right, as I'm sort of alluding to, it services whatever the motions are. And again, I am not saying that outbound goes away in favor of inbound or vice versa. I'm saying that all these need to coexist. And whatever the go-to-market motion is, if it is sales-led, if it is product-led, if it's community-led, event-led, partner-led, we have a lot of different leads. But from a marketing perspective, we all need to be ready to address any and all of them. And ultimately, it's hybrid go-to-market. It's a set of those things that are often in play for most tech organizations, particularly as they mature and grow. So we want this notion of evolving to be ready for anything. So the next question becomes, all right, David, you said this is what we want to aspire to. So what can marketing do to get there? How does marketing support that sort of unbound world? I think the first thing is to recognize that unbound doesn't mean reckless. It doesn't mean insane spending. It's not limitless. We ultimately want to get to a point of focus. And I think that there's kind of a saying that has become popular at Gartner, particularly among folks that deal with our sales leaders, is that often we talk about doing more with less. When budgets tighten, that sort of thing, we do more with less. I think that the ultimate goal is to do less with less. That I want to have an ideal customer profile, but I need it to be precise. I need it to reflect those accounts, prospects, customers that represent the best opportunity for us to win. And I need that to be leveraged, not just in marketing, but in sales, obviously, and ultimately by whoever owns the accounts once they're paying us. We need to evolve from this overarching focus on the MQL to not care what the QLs are. I've traditionally called these XQLs, so it's PQLs, MQLs, SQLs, whatever's. This is sort of, guess what? This is how we get the signals. It's recognizing all of the different elements of data that are created and thrown off by people doing things with respect to potentially buying something, renewing, and so on. We want to capitalize any investments that we've made in MarTech and the ever burgeoning, growing sales tech stack. There's a piece of data that suggests that MarTech stacks are tremendously underutilized. But in spite of that, there's a lot of data that exists. There's data that exists as a result of those investments on the marketing side. There's data that exists in sales and from sales tech stacks. There's data that exists about our customers. We need to take advantage of that and capitalize on it. It would be useful if along the way we had this magic alignment with respect to the data that I'm talking about and the actions that are taken as a result of that data. One example, just talking about ideal customer profile, we know our data tells us that when sales and marketing work together, collaborate on creating an ICP, deals close faster, deal sizes go up. When marketing and sales collaborate on other things, even at the level of messaging, deals close faster, deal sizes go up. So we want to have that alignment, but I know it's hard. And ultimately, what we want to be able to do is to determine who's going to buy something. And when we think we have that notion that they're inclined to do something, that they have the intent to do something, we need to know when that happens, and we need to know what action to take. We want to get to this level of precision with respect to pipeline, with respect to opportunities, with respect to converting that to revenue. So that notion of precision is really where we want to head. Now, part of getting there is recognizing, and I think this is something that has evolved as well over time, is that an account as a data item or a representation of an entity that's going to buy something is actually a collective. And that collective is represented itself by a variety of different types of information that reflect its actions, its activities, with you, without you, with your product, without your product, and so on. Now, on this graphic, you can see in the dark blue represent forms of data that have been around for a while. So data that's common, it's data that's handled well, typically by our CRM applications, by our sales engagement applications. It's data that we know and love. It's people that visit websites. It's what we know from digital adoption. It's people that are looking at peer reviews. It's the traditional sets of SALs and SQLs and conversations that salespeople have. But in addition to that, over the last, again, several years, as go-to-market motions have evolved, and I think, and I'm, full disclosure, I spend and have spent lots and lots of time in product-led growth. So I've seen this happen, that I think that product analytics and the use of product analytics to get a better idea of intent of purchase through free offers, through things like interactive demos and so on, is really the harbinger of this new, or was the harbinger and the initiative of this new signals movement. So we had newer types of data, product analytics, community analytics. We're starting to recognize, hey, if we can take these other types of information and link them to what we know about our customers and how healthy they are and whether they're seeing value from their purchases, we have a much better idea at figuring out who's going to renew, who's not going to renew, who's going to churn, who's ripe for expansion, and so on. And within this, and it's important to realize where this data comes from. It's important to note that we have to recognize that an account is this collective, not just of the data, but the different entities that are creating and throwing off that data. So an account is made up of users and prospective users, of existing customers, of prospective buyers and influencers. And our last speaker talked about buying teams. in B2B, particularly as deal sizes increase, as target customer sizes increase, you have buying teams that are larger and larger, and they're comprised of all these individuals that have different forms, different levels of influence over that purchase. And both in terms of this broader set of data and ultimately signals that we're talking about, we are able to account for all of those entities and what they're doing and the impact that they can have on a purchase, on a renewal, on expansion. And that's what gets us moving along this evolutionary path from intent to signals. Now, this is not David saying that intent data is useless. It's not David saying that account-based marketing is useless. Far from it. These are both valuable things. And I refuse to get brought into the fun arguments, discussions, and whatnot that occur out in LinkedIn world. You can go read about those. You may all be participating in those as well. But I think just to take a rational look at things, intent data has been tremendously useful. It's better than not having intent data. It's useful, it's broad, but it has its limitations and it has its gaps. And there were different gaps and different points of failure that we've recognized with intent data over time. It's my contention that the notion of signals and the data that's represented by signals and the ability to take advantage of them through applications that I'll talk about called customer intelligence applications and other related applications overcome a number of the issues, a number of the points of failure that you see here that exist with intent data. Again, I'm not saying intent data is useless. In fact, there's another chart that I had seen yesterday. You'll see in a minute. Mad Kudu, as an example, is a customer intelligence application vendor. If I remember correctly, I think 33% of Mad Kudu customers are also demand-based customers. A large proportion of ABM and intent data customers also are dealing with signals and using applications that deal with them. So this is not one or the other. These things coexist, but I think it's important in thinking about how you deal with signals to recognize that it can make up for some of the points of failure that exist with intent data. I think the other thing about intent data is that it is predominantly used for new logo acquisition, new customer acquisition. Now, on this chart, you can see that the orange bar at the top says that 57% of the time, the most common use case is targeting new in-market buyers. Now, the third one there, if you read quickly, is target customers in renewal cycle. But the vast majority of activity with intent data is new business. And we certainly know, and I'm sure you all know, the wealth of opportunity that your existing customers represent. Upsell, cross-sell, expansion, all of that. How do we drive growth in our existing customers? And wouldn't it be useful if we had data that represented their actions with the products, actions that result from their conversations with customer support, an understanding of their health, and linking all of that together to create an indicator of what they are likely to do or not to do with you and your offerings. So expansion business is an important thing here. So let's talk a little bit about, why are signals different? Why are they so much different from intent and intent data? And I'm going to take I think a very simplistic, look at this, but I think it's useful. We'll see. So I'm going to say that the actions that all of those entities that we talked about, the users, the influencers, the buyers, customers, all of the actions that they take and what those mean in terms of their prospective intent to purchase or renew is what contributes to creating signals. Now, we've always had the notions of first party, second party, third party data, all of these things. If you look at it in the 2x2 that I have here, you can also think about them in terms of data that you own, data that you don't own, and data that's reflected by what an account does as a collective, and data about what individuals are doing, on their own. And you can already see, some of the differences in what we're used to with intent data or what we're used to in just looking for MQLs and the sort of information in this much broader look at signals that exists. So, it's everything from job postings by a company that might reflect an investment that they're making, information in their 10Q that is useful to understand what they're valuing this year relative to last year. It's individuals posting things. It's individual job changes. It's what people do with your products, so on and so forth. At a high level, signals represent things that those entities do, just in general. Some of the things in, for example, the upper right, they attend a conference from a third party. Wow, maybe I can figure that out and capitalize on that. Signals represent things that they do that relate to you, but they do them without you, like doing searches on competitors in a peer review site, something like that. And then there are things that they do with you, how they use your product, how they're not using your product, support issues, interactions with sales, interactions with whomever, all of those things. And I think, again, to sum it up, I think generally we can think of signals this way or these ways, that signals are actions taken by individuals and accounts related to outcomes they want to drive in their organization. So they may have nothing to do with your offerings, but they can relate based on those sorts of activities and what you can infer from them. And then obviously it's the data, not only from those sorts of activities, but it's the data that doesn't fit nicely and neatly into traditional models, either of what we define as account or data that is novel, like, or at least became novel, like product analytics or community analytics and so on. So this is what signals represent. And I think you can see it's a much broader set, but that breadth is critical in getting you from a point of accuracy. And I think, we can agree intent data has been relatively accurate, but if we want to get to precision, like we're talking about, who's doing what, when are they doing it, what are they most likely to do based on a collection, ranking, scoring, and then what that means, and then actions taken on it, we get to precision through dealing with signals. What sorts of applications deal well in this world? I'm now going to talk about this growing, burgeoning world of customer intelligence and related applications that consume signals and then allow you to act appropriately upon them. And you'll permit me to be silly for a minute. If we want to understand what CIAs do, and I am going to say that I'm not responsible for creating this acronym. Somebody else at Gartner saw customer intelligence application and said, hey, they're CIAs. And of course, we need acronyms for everything. But, in my case, it may be a boring metaphor, but I think it's useful. Because if you think about what the company does, what the CIA does, they're really big on SIGINT, or signal intelligence. What is signal intelligence? You can read it here. It's the act of gathering intelligence by intercepting signals, whether it's electronic signals or people signals or whatever. And very similarly, customer intelligence applications, our CIA is about tracking, aggregating, stacking, scoring, and acting on this array of information that's thrown off by all of the representative entities that comprise an account, whether they purchased something or whether they didn't. I think another neat thing, other than all of that, which is pretty substantial, a neat thing that the customer intelligence applications help us do is that they help us overcome these silos. So if you'll, again, permit me an awful analogy or metaphor here, we all know this well. Many organizations have these silos, both functional silos, but also data silos relative to marketing, to sales, to customer success. And there are a lot of actions that we would like to take. There are a lot of things that we want to be able to take advantage of, leads we want to understand, and revenue we want to drive, and retention that we want to accomplish, and expansion that requires the connectivity and or at the very least, the use of data across all of these silos. Now, I said earlier, it's really, really hard to get alignment across these. Yes, it happens, but it's very difficult. Well, what we want to be able to accomplish through aligning functions and or the data is, so first of all, we want to recognize that there's this wealth of data that exists that is going to help us understand who's most likely to purchase, when are they likely to do something, and what should we do about it. The way that organizations have dealt with this traditionally, and traditionally means, over the last several years, is even as they recognize that there's this greater set of data, what they tend to do with it is undertake data engineering exercises of finding it, capturing it when they've decided to capture it, and then putting it into a data warehouse, a little more rarely a customer data platform. Mostly it's data warehouses that are the stores of this aggregation of information. And then there is a development project or a set of development projects of building pipelines and reverse ETLing and generating reports and trying to convert all of that information that's been stored up into actions that drive human activity or drive actions in other applications, whether it's marketing automation, whether it's sales engagement, any of those things. And my view of the world is that both, the notion of understanding that these signals exist across these different areas and within them, but that there are customer intelligence applications that overcome and replace that need to get your developers to go build bespoke things that are outdated in about a week. Customer intelligence applications are, somewhat apologies, or they're able to overcome this lack of alignment, both, functionally and from a data perspective. Now, it's a burgeoning market, and as a result of being a burgeoning, evolving, quickly changing market, it's confusing. This is not at all, I'm not picking on G2. G2 is a fantastic resource. Gartner has its own peer review and related resources. But what I thought I would do is just do a search. Like, if I want to know, I'm in this market, I'm interested in these sorts of applications, I want to compare a couple of them. Let's say I want to compare a koala to Pocus. And when I go look, what do I end up with? I end up with 11 different categories that are named. It's really hard to kind of figure out what each of these sorts of applications do, where they focus, where their core competencies are, and so on. So I'm going to try to take a stab at a taxonomy or a categorization. And, I am going to say that, by no means do I think this is necessarily 100% accurate. It's certainly not exhaustive. There are many, many other vendors that are across these spaces. But I think you can see some interesting things when you categorize this way. One of, I think, the most interesting things is who the target audiences are for these products. So, if you buy my very basic definitions on the right-hand side, one of the things that you see is that there's a set of these applications that have been more marketing focused, and there's a set that are and are continuing to be more sales focused. And I think that there's an opportunity for all of these to be considered, or most of them at least, to be considered by marketing. Now, there's some of them that are very focused for sellers, for account execs, to make a determination of, hey, I have these 100 accounts I could do something with. What can I know about them? So some of those are very focused in that way. But, the marketing side, so the ABM applications are busy building in a bunch of capability to deliver their data to salespeople more effectively. The customer intelligence applications typically are focused at sales ops and CROs and rev ops folks, and to a degree go-to-market folks. But I think if marketing doesn't take advantage of them, it's a miss. And I think it's an opportunity for marketing to get in the game, to get this level of precision and deliver this notion of precise pipeline. But the challenge here is, just as fast as you begin to understand what all's going on across these different categories, the lines blur. And it is largely due to the impact and onslaught of generative AI that these lines are blurring, that products are more able, and vendors of products are more able to move across these designations and provide a broader set of capability. So in the last couple of minutes here, I want to give a view of, and it's a really high level view of the value that Gen AI is bringing to this world of customer intelligence applications. So if I were to write a song about it, I'd say, what's Gen AI got to do with it? Well, what doesn't it have to do? What isn't Gen AI adding to signal-based everything? So at a high level, and I think this is sort of where AI and Gen AI have made a difference with respect to customer intelligence applications. It is help me figure out what accounts need or what accounts deserve attention from marketing, from sales, from whomever, and tell me what actions to take with them based on those signals that we're collecting. Is it somebody who needs an onboarding script? Is it an account that needs attention? Is it a prospective account that did 8 different things that suggest they're really ready to purchase something? All of those things. I'm being simple about it, but that's how initially Gen AI has helped these applications. It's also helping understand from the perspective of the individual creating signals, how do I resolve that individual up to an account level? So it's a combination of Gen AI, it's enrichment, it's a number of different things that are helping you all understand, hey, when one person does a thing, looks at an interactive demo, does a variety of things on a website, has an interaction, all of that, but maybe they're anonymous, or even if they're not, how do I resolve that up to an account? And can I figure out other things about that account, like who else might be on that buying team? Who else might I want to address based on what I now learn about who that individual is and what the relationship is in the account? Another really cool thing is these applications, and through the magic of Gen AI, are helping to inform and evolve ideal customer profiles. So I think it both gets you to a greater level of precision with an existing ICP, but it may also suggest, hey, there's this microcosm of accounts that are more ready, that represent better intent, that are more ready to purchase something or renew or are about to churn, that you need to do something with, and you need to address that cohort of accounts in a particular way. So Gen AI helps with that. Additionally, once you know who it is you want to address and the actions you want to take, Gen AI is going to help me talk to them. It's going to help me speak in their context. So based on the signals that they're throwing off and based on who they are, the markets they're in, all of that, I now can have an email generated that is meaningful. It is not this spray and pray generic awful email that we're used to in outbound. It is a much more precise, more relevant, more in context set of information that, it may need a little bit of tailoring, but it's directionally accurate and a huge time saver. And then ultimately, Gen AI is going to help us hyper personalize. Now, that could mean micro campaigns, as I was alluding to. It might mean simply the right things for those right individuals in an account. And we can have an argument about, is over personalization good or bad? But generally speaking, Gen AI is going to help us be more in context with those individuals, with those entities, with those accounts. And so with that, I hope that this was informative. I'm very much a cheerleader of the burgeoning signal movement and the related applications. So with that, I will say thank you very much, and I will send you on your way to the rest of the summit.